I'm Dorothy Shaw, 34 years old, an environmental engineer living in Omaha. That night, during what should have been an ordinary Sunday dinner at my parents' house, my world fractured. The roast sat untouched. My brother, Justin, smirked. His wife, Miriam, watched me like a predator. My mother stared at her plate. A portrait of silent consent. Then my father leaned forward. His voice like ice cracking on a frozen lake. You can take the guest room, or you can move out. The words hung in the air. A verdict delivered without a trial. The fork slipped from my hand. Clattering against the china, Justin's glee was a physical thing. A disgusting shimmer in the air. Miriam's smile was a victory lap. There was no argument to be had. This was an execution. Asterisk. I had been covering most of this household's expenses. Asterisk. The thought burned through the initial shock, replaced by a cold, clarifying rage. The new fridge humming in the kitchen. The windows that no longer rattled in the winter. The very electricity lighting their triumphant faces. That was all me. Fine, I said, my voice steady. Surprising. Even myself. I'm gone. I stood, pushed my chair in, and walked out of the dining room without another word. They expected tears, pleading. They didn't get it. I went straight to the living room and unplugged the 65-inch television I'd bought for the Super Bowl. Then, I started pulling the cushions off the sectional sofa I'd paid for just last year. Justin followed me, his mocking laughter echoing in the hall. You're seriously taking the couch. That's pathetic. Dorothy? I ignored him. This wasn't about the furniture. It was about ripping my contributions out of the very walls of that house. It was a declaration. Every item I carried out to my car, the coffee maker, the standing mixer, the high-end router was a receipt for my sacrifice. Dad appeared in the doorway. His arms crossed. His face a mask of disapproval. You're making a scene. Good? I said, hauling the last box into my trunk. Maybe now you'll finally see what's missing when I'm gone. I slammed the trunk shut and drove away. Not looking back. I wasn't just leaving a room, I was repossessing my life. A week later, my phone would buzz with a frantic call from my mother. My brother screaming in the background. She's lying. Mom, tell me she's lying. The chaos was just beginning. This wasn't a sudden betrayal. It was the culmination of 1,000 tiny cuts. I'd moved back home years ago, after my grandmother passed, intending it to be temporary. But the house was bleeding money. The mortgage was a constant threat. The utilities were perpetually overdue. And the roof had a leak. My father pretended didn't exist. So, I stayed my 60-hour work weeks as an environmental engineer, running from site inspections to late-night reports, became the financial backbone of the household. My paycheck wasn't for me, it was for new windows, a water heater, and property taxes. I kept the lights on, while my brother, Justin, perfected the art of failing upward. He burned through one half-baked business idea after another, a food truck that never passed inspection, a crypto app that vanished with its investors' money, an online store selling junk from overseas. Each time, he'd return to our father with a new pitch, and Dad would praise his vision and hustle, blind to the trail of debt behind him. My contributions were invisible, taken for granted. I was the foundation, steady and silent, while Justin was the flashy, unstable facade. They all admired The wound that never healed came one evening, when I overheard my mother whispering to my father in the kitchen. "She's just here to help." "George," she'd said, her voice soft with pity. "Justin's the one with the big dreams." It stung, with a unique kind of pain. I wasn't their daughter keeping the family afloat. I was a tenant. A utility. A walking, talking ATM machine whose only purpose was to fund my brother's next spectacular failure. Their dismissal that night wasn't a surprise. It was simply the first time they'd said it to my face. Then Justin brought Miriam home. She arrived like a storm front. All flashing smiles. Sharp heels. And the scent of expensive perfume. She was introduced as a real estate powerhouse. And my parents were instantly mesmerized. I watched her pull up in a gleaming black SUV. A watch on her wrist that cost more than my first car. It didn't add up. Real estate in Omaha is solid. But it's not times lucrative for someone barely 30. The red flags started waving immediately. When I asked about her work, the properties she was moving, she'd deflect with vague talk of high-yield investments and closing a big deal. She spoke in buzzwords like equity and leverage that made my father's eyes light up. Even though he clearly didn't understand them, Justin just beamed beside her, nodding like a puppy, proud to have captured such a prize. Soon, the shopping bags started appearing, designer brands I couldn't afford even working overtime. She'd claim a new phone was a business expense, and no one questioned it. Dad would just clap Justin on the back. "You picked a good one, son." My concerns were brushed off as jealousy. "She's successful." "Dorothy," my mother would say, "don't be so skeptical." I once saw her glance at me during dinner. A quick, dismissive smirk flickering across her face before it vanished. She knew she had them. She knew they were dazzled by the shine. Unwilling to look at the rot underneath, she was a predator who had identified her prey, and I was the only one in the herd who could smell the danger. She was selling them a dream. And I knew, with sickening certainty, they were buying it with the money I was earning. After I moved into a small downtown apartment, the unease about Miriam festered. It wasn't just a gut feeling. My engineer's brain saw a flawed equation. The numbers didn't work. I called Michael, an old colleague from a conference, who now worked in commercial real estate. "It's been a while." "Dorothy?" he said. His voice friendly. I cut straight to it, asking if he'd heard of a real estate agent named Miriam Cole. There was a pause on the line. "Miriam Cole," he repeated slowly. "Yeah. Her name has come up. Word is her agency is under investigation by federal authorities. Shady deals. Flipping properties with fake appraisals. Skimming client funds. Nothing's proven yet. But where there's smoke..." My blood ran cold. This was real. I thanked him and immediately dialed my father's number. "Dad, you need to listen to me." I started, my voice urgent, as I explained what Michael had told me. His response was a dismissive grunt. "Don't stick your nose in their business. Dorothy, they're doing fine without you stirring things up." I tried to press, mentioning the federal investigation, but he cut me off. "Enough. Focus on your own life." Click. The line went dead. Frustrated, I called my mother, hoping for a sliver of reason. "Mom, please. Miriam's firm is being investigated for fraud." She sighed. The sound of a lifetime of avoidance. "Dorothy, let it go. They're happy. Don't ruin it." They weren't just ignoring me. They were actively choosing her fantasy over my facts. Their rejection didn't deter me. It galvanized me. This was no longer about protecting them from a mistake. It was about uncovering a crime. And it was about proving I was right all along. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Michael. Dorothy. I did some more digging after we talked. He said, his voice grim, "You were right to be worried. It's much worse than I thought." He took a breath. "Her name is on a mortgage document for your parents' house. It's a second lien. Taken out last month for $250,000. It's tied to a shell company registered in Delaware." The world tilted. The house, the one I'd poured my own money into, the one I'd stayed to protect, was now collateral in her criminal enterprise. "Send it to me," I whispered, my hands shaking. While waiting for his email, a new, sickening thought hit me. I logged into the shared family savings account I still had access to. The one meant for my parents' retirement. My heart stopped. The balance, which should have been close to $200,000, was nearly zero. I scrolled through the transaction history. A series of large transfers, all made within the last month, to an account linked directly to Miriam's agency. It was a systematic draining, a calculated theft. She hadn't just tricked them, she had hollowed them out from the inside, taking their entire future right from under their noses. The numbers on the screen weren't just figures, they were years of my parents' work. Their security, gone. And when Michael's email arrived, there it was in black and white. My father's signature on the loan document that made it all possible. They hadn't just kicked me out. They had handed the keys to the thief. The betrayal was absolute. A catastrophic failure of judgment that was about to cost them everything. My phone buzzed late one evening. It was my mother. Her voice a panicked whisper. "Dorothy, there are people here. Investigators. They're asking for Miriam. I'm on my way." I said, my voice calm. I knew this was it. I grabbed my keys, my heart pounding with a strange mix of dread and vindication. When I pulled up, 2 plainclothes investigators were standing on the porch. My father looked pale and shrunken, and Justin was pacing frantically behind him, clutching his phone. "We have evidence linking Miriam Cole to a series of fraudulent transactions," one investigator was saying. His tone, professional but firm, "including a second mortgage for $250,000 taken out on this property." Justin's head snapped up. "She's lying. Mom, tell them she's lying," he shrieked, his composure completely shattering. My mother just stood there, a statue of silent complicity. Her inaction, a confession in itself. Just then, I saw Miriam's sleek black SUV pull up across the street, its headlights cutting through the dusk. She was coming back to the scene of the crime. Perfect. She hadn't seen me yet. I crossed the street, my hand already in my pocket, thumb pressing the record button on my phone. "Miriam," I called out. Her head whipped around, her eyes wide with shock as she saw me, then darted to the investigators on the porch. The mask of polished composure slipped. "What is this about?" "Dorothy," she hissed, trying to regain control. "The game is up," I said, my voice low and steady. "I know about the mortgage. I know you drained their retirement account. I know everything." Her face twisted into an ugly snarl. The charm was gone, replaced by pure venom. "Fine," she snapped, the words tumbling out in a rush of arrogant defiance. "I took the money. The house was collateral for a deal. Your idiot father signed off on it. And Justin was too clueless to notice a thing. They trusted me. That's on them. Every word was a golden nail in her coffin, captured perfectly on my phone. Before I could say another word, she jumped in her car, tires screeching as she sped away into the night. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. I had her confession back at the house. Justin was a wreck. How could she do this? He sobbed. He turned to me, his eyes wild with desperation. You knew. Why didn't you stop her? I looked at him, feeling nothing but cold contempt. I tried, I said evenly. You called me jealous. You, Dad, and Mom. You all shut me out. Later that night, my phone rang. It was my father. His voice broken. Dorothy, the bank is calling in the loan. We're going to lose the house. We need you. Can you please come back? I closed my eyes, picturing the dinner, the smug looks, the years of being their disposable safety net. No. Dad, I said. And for the first time, my voice didn't waver. I gave you everything for that house. And you chose her. You made your bed. Now you can lie in it. I hung up before he could plead. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary forged in fire. 6 months later, I was standing in my bright, airy apartment in downtown Omaha, looking at blueprints for a new bridge design. I'd been promoted to lead engineer. The life I'd put on hold for so long was finally, unequivocally mine. My family lost the house. The bank foreclosed, and they were forced into a cramped rental in a rundown part of town. Justin was working part-time at a hardware store, his big dreams reduced to stocking shelves and begging friends for loans. Dad was driving for a delivery service, and Mom was cleaning houses to make ends meet. Their golden goose, Miriam, had been arrested in another state, facing a long list of federal charges, thanks in part to the recording I provided. But that didn't bring back the money. The damage was done. My mother sent a letter. It sat on my kitchen counter, unopened. A white envelope full of apologies I no longer needed to hear. Cutting them off wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an act of survival. I had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let go of the people who are determined to drag you down. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, trust, and mutual support. When those things are gone, all you have left is a shared history that holds you hostage. I chose freedom. I chose peace. I chose myself. I want to thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to live, and it's not easy to tell, but it's important to talk about drawing lines, even with the people you're supposed to love unconditionally. Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with your family to protect your own peace of mind? Share your experience in the comments below. Let's discuss what it truly means to stand up for yourself. Even when it's the hardest thing you'll ever have to do,